It's interesting to recall how certain dino deaths, or should I say death by dinos, happened, but it also makes you wonder if there was any way these people who became victims to these monsters could have avoided it. In this video and some others, we're going to be discussing possible theories on how you could avoid death by dino. This video will be focusing on Nedry from Jurassic Park, the first film. As you may remember, Dennis Nedry was responsible for computer programming in Hammond's Park. Hammond, for some reason, even though he spared no expense on other things, paid Dennis very poorly. I don't get that. So we really can't blame Dennis for accepting a deal from Biosin if he stole some of the dinosaur embryos from Hammond's Park and handed them over to them. Lewis Dobson, the head of Biosin, was more than happy to compensate Nedry for his heist, about $1.5 million worth. Dobson paid him half of that up front after they made their deal in San Jose. Nedry then laid low when he returned to Isla Nublar. After he disabled the dinosaur park security system, Dennis Nedry nabbed the dino embryos, stole Jeep 12, and made a beeline for the East Dock to get the rest of his pay. Of course, as karma would have it, he lost control of the Jeep and crashed into a fallen tree, where it got stuck. Determined to get the rest of that 1.5 mil, he wasted no time getting out and trying to find his way. I think he was nervous, which was the reason he was rushing and then crashed. He thought he didn't have enough time and he was committing a very hefty crime, probably his first time doing something like this. Anyway, he didn't know which way was east and so was confused. Nedry used a rope designed for towing to dislodge his Jeep from the branch upon which it was stuck. He slipped and tumbled, which caused him to lose his glasses. Knowing he could afford more glasses, he continued on. While he was tying the rope to a tree, a young Dilophosaurus noticed him. When I first saw this, when I was very young, I thought that he had stumbled into the Dilophosaurus paddock, but it was roaming around freely because the park security systems had been disabled, except the raptor pens. So that was nice to clear up. As you get older, you realize how much you missed. Anyway, the Dilophosaurus commenced what seemed like a peekaboo game, which I thought was very funny at the time, the first time I saw it. The annoying one that squirrels play when they're on trees. The little nervous and annoyed, Dennis turned his back on the dinosaur and went back up the slippery hill atop where his Jeep lay disabled. The Dilophosaurus followed him, and when he turned around, waiting to see what would happen next, that's when the Dilophosaurus went full-on predator mode. It sprayed its venom at him and missed. It had been aiming for his eyes. Right before getting into the vehicle, he looked again, and that's when he got the second dose, which did catch his eyes. The venom apparently is really acidic or corrosive because Dennis was screaming in pain. He couldn't see, and he was nervous, and so he hit his head on the frame of the Jeep, causing him to fall back. So immediately afterward, Nedry managed to get back inside of his vehicle, and to his misfortune, the Dilophosaurus had got into the passenger seat. With the doors of the Jeep closed or shut, there's nowhere for Dennis Nedry to run, and the Dilophosaurus proceeded to attack him and have him for dinner. Now, in another video, we'll explain this a little bit more clearly because I've always wondered how the Dilophosaurus was able to get past him and into the passenger seat of the vehicle. I mean, the passenger side door, and I looked several times, was not open. Dennis Nedry never opened it. There would have been no reason for him to open it, and the windows weren't down, so it doesn't make sense that the Dilophosaurus would pass him to just sit inside the Jeep and then kill him instead of killing him while he was already on the ground. Anyway, we'll get into that theory in the next video. Now, I know there are many things prior to the situation that Dennis Nedry could have done to possibly survive, but what I'll be presenting are minor changes, and I'll be focusing more on what he could have done in the situation, within the encounter, and not before, because no one really knows when danger is going to happen. They have to know how to react when already in it. So Dennis Nedry did not know what kind of dinosaur this was. Clearly, it is possible he might not have even been able to see it. After all, his encounter started when he didn't have on his glasses. I don't know how bad Dennis's eyesight was, but that cute cooing noise that the Dilophosaurus was making made it sound non-threatening. However, being out in the open, he should have been very cautious, not knowing what dinosaurs were dangerous or not. And I mean, it was a bit naive for him to not think ahead, to have some sort of weapon, or at least to hold on to the stick that he had, or some kind of stick to use to defend himself. When he was returning to the Jeep, he should have kept his head straight. There's no reason he should have turned back to look at the Dilophosaurus. I mean, had he done that, he would have been able to keep his eye on the danger or even recognize danger in the passenger seat. At that point in time, he would have had a little time to react by closing the door, trapping the danger inside. Being that the creatures came from within the vegetation and he wouldn't be able to see in the dark what other dangers lie in the shadows, it would have been best for him to climb on top of the back of the Jeep after shutting the driver door. Even if he didn't have a stick in hand, he would have been better able to see and deal with the dinosaurs trying to get up on the Jeep. In the rain, all the vehicle's metal, slippery body, it would have made it a bit difficult for them to reach him, unless they had an amazing jumping ability, which Dilophosauruses are not really known for. If a bigger dinosaur came along, like the T-Rex, inevitably it would scare the smaller dinosaurs away. They would probably sense it coming way before Dennis did, giving him time to escape himself into the trees, where the T-Rex most likely wouldn't see him. If there's no T-Rex, then Dennis Nedry would just have to wait it out on the roof of the Jeep until the others caught up to him, meaning the other people or co-workers, and apprehended him. That's the only way I could have seen him surviving within the problem. Of course, he could have planned a lot better leading up to that point as well, but as we said before, it's unfair to assess it that way since Dennis didn't see that coming. You say that he might have been able to climb a tree, but Dennis probably would not have been able to be nimble enough to climb a nearby tree, especially with it being slippery, so his only option in this case, I feel, was the roof of the Jeep with the Dilophosaurus trapped inside. Well, up on the roof of the Jeep, while the Dilophosaurus would be trying to get him, if it was outside or it got outside, he could also use a scare tactic, raising his arms to make himself appear larger and more intimidating, and screaming as loud as he could in a menacing war cry. Of course, this could piss it off more, or it could have the opposite effect. He would have to do this with his eyes closed or angled away from the Dilophosaurus, so it wouldn't get a deadpan straight shot into his eyes with its venom. I understand that Nedry's character was hired for a specific job, but you would think, in the case of, in the event some unplanned thing happens at the park, that everyone would have specific training to know how to deal with it should it happen. We're not dealing with pussycats and poodles or camels and polar bears. We're dealing with dinosaurs. No one should be working at a park, period, not knowing at all which animals are dangerous and which aren't. I think a dinosaur that can spit venom into people's eyes is a very high mark on the list. So just a lesson, watchers, know your surroundings. You don't have to be an expert in your new environment, but at least know what the primary source of goodness is, as well as the primary source of detriment. Now, how do you guys think Dennis Nedry could have avoided this horrific death by Dilophosaurus? Tell us in the comments. Thanks for watching. This has been Alteori. You ask, we answer.